Doing? Everyone's good, yeah? There's so many of you. How we doing? All right, we'll take it. All right, this is the last session in this room right before the evening keynote speaker. So if you guys, let's welcome this next speaker as if there's 1,000 people in here. Put your hands together right now, everybody, for Joe Johnson from Universal Mind, everybody. Joe Johnson.
All right, hello everybody. Yeah. Let me see the lights. Yeah, lots. You guys can come down front here. I'm not going to bite too much. So I'm not Gallagher. I'm not going to throw anything on the stage either. Yeah, I'm Joe Johnston. I'm VP of Experience Innovation for a digital agency called Universal Mind. We create a lot of custom digital experiences for our clients, a wide range of those, with anything from devices to even inside of cars. So today we're going to talk about this fun topic that I love to chat about, which is design for sensors, not screens. And it's really about creating these frictionless or friction-free experiences. You probably have heard that term a little bit as we start to talk about these holistic experiences that involve the physical, the digital realm that customers are starting to get into. But I want to set the tone a little bit and kind of set the stage. Obviously, the likes of Forrester and Gartner, if you've heard lately, they've talked a lot about the last year and even this year being the year of the customer, and really focusing on the customer experience, serving up your customers with the best experience possible, which I agree, although I think there may be a little bit of challenges to that. I think there's some interesting things that have happened over the course of the year. Everybody has jumped onto, and I'm sure there's probably a few in here as well that have started to talk about a mobile-first strategy. And I think, in the UX and design world, I think it's great that we're starting to focus a little bit more on those mobile devices, but I think we may have taken this a step too far. I think it's not so much a mobile-first strategy as it is a mobile-only strategy in some cases. And I think, although I think it's great to talk about it, it may not be the best approach for an encompassing holistic experience. So it's more around focusing around the idea of a contextual or context-first experience. So taking in all of those facets of that individual customer and others, which I'll get to in a second, and how they interact and experience holistically, both physically, digitally, on the phone, voice of the customer. All of those are digital touch points that your customers and your clients' customers are interacting with. So think about it from a contextual standpoint, and as well as we'll get deeper in the presentation, starting to talk about all the other wonderful digital devices that they interact with. So I love to talk about it, as well as I think some others. 2015 and beyond is more about the year of the experience. And I deliberately left off anything in front of that because I think experience is encompassing both the customer and the employees, or the internal experience. Too many times that gets degraded down in the priority list because we're so focused on that customer experience. And I'll get a couple touch points around why it's so important to focus on the employee experience or internal experience as well. So to set the stage with experience in general, what better company to talk about than Disney, right? And I'm sure a lot of us in here, and I can't see all hands, but definitely a lot of us have probably experienced or about to experience this great new product, which has been out for a couple years now, or at least been in development for several, is the Disney Magic Bands and their Magic Plus platform. And if you haven't experienced before, I encourage you to try to get a trip out to Disney and experience. Is actually a wearable NFC band that replaces anything from tickets to purchasing to unlocking your doors. But they made it an entire experience, even down to ordering it. You get a package in the mail. You get to pick your colors and even icons that are on there. They even made little decorations that are actually attached to it. But they've created this great experience. The one thing I wanted to point out was this Be Our Guest, which I'm going to hit on a couple times, but this wonderful Be Our Guest experience, which is in the bottom left-hand corner here, is a dining experience that they've leveraged inside of the world of Disney. And they utilize these Magic Bands both for the customer to walk in and remove that transaction layer and actually have a dining experience set up all for them, utilizing this NFC band, as well as the employees have a chance to actually chat about it as well. But they've done a great job. They've created an experience not only for the customer, but they actually extended that experience and had a great offshoot and created a great employee experience as well to serve up that very emotional experience at Disney. So the great thing about Disney, though, they live in their walled garden. And I think a lot of companies always say they would want to have this Disney Magic Band-like experience. Unfortunately, we live in the real world, and it's very difficult to tie all that communication together. So I think what we're going to hit on a little bit today is how to create these experiences and how to create that friction-free experience. They removed that transaction layer of grabbing a ticket for a fast pass and giving it to an individual to get on the ride. Actually replaced that with that magic band, and they removed some of that transaction feel and created a frictionless experience. And that's what you're always trying to cater towards. And when I talk about friction-free or frictionless experience, there's a great model that probably a lot of people know. It's kind of why Earth exists here today. It's called the Goldilocks principle. We're in the right place at the right time. And that's when you think about creating experiences. That's really what you're trying to do, is create the best experience at the just right time. Now, that's probably one of the most difficult things as a designer or others or product individuals, even entire teams. That's probably the most difficult thing to do, is create that just right experience for all of your wide variety of customers. Everybody's in a different point at a different stage in that particular customer journey. So how do you cater towards that? That's where the difficult part comes in, is understanding context and then serving up that just right, just-in-time experience. So this model represents how that experience should be intended to be. Getting to that point is the difficult part. So on that notion of creating these frictionless or friction-free experiences, I think we've all kind of experienced maybe what's classified as the Frankenstein App, where you just keep on adding feature after feature. Think of it more as, you understand you make people happier by removing those features and functionalities and stripping away as much as you can. And now think about how you can leverage other types of, when we talk about sensors and other types of geolocation and other types of things to offset some of those contextual driven items that may be living inside of an app today. How can you remove some of those features and not remove features, but add the interactions to those features and replace those with a frictionless or friction-free experience? So that's one of the more difficult things. As designers, we always try to remove features, but obviously it's always trying to add those features or add the benefits to those, but it's really about tying those down, making it as simple as possible. So throughout the presentation, I'll have some very interesting statistics here which benefit the reason why we need these frictionless and friction-free experiences. Some of them are a little bit scary. And this stat is a little bit scary. It's probably not totally accurate. It's probably gone up over the course of me putting the presentation together over the last month or so. But 221 times a day, and I'm sure many of you may do less or more of that. But here's the really scary one. The time actually spent on those mobile devices on average is 3 hours and 16 minutes a day. Now, that's 20% of your waking hours that you're awake, that you're actually utilizing your phone. Now, it's scary, but it's also maybe a benefit as well. I wrote an article recently on time spent is time gained. You're using your phone more because you're saving time doing other things. So take grocery shopping, for example. You can save more time by utilizing that device, but it's extremely scary. Now, if you want to find out yourself or others, there's a great app called Moment. It's called inthemoment.io. That actually allows you to capture the amount of usage of time that you get to use in your phone. It also picks up the number of times you pick up your phone. So here's just some screenshots just from some of the usage that I have. My average is roughly around closer to 4 hours. I'm in the industry, so I'm on my phone quite a bit, as I'm sure many of us are. But it actually gives a very interesting timeline. So if you ever want to kind of dive in a little bit into your own usage or other usage to see if verify that number, go download that app Moment from the App Store. It's got some great detail, and it's also going to be leveraged for the Apple Watch as well, so you'll be able to start seeing the interaction model there. This starts to lead into, I'm sure you've probably seen some of the articles as well as some of the comments around what's called the invisible interface, or that idea of removing those elements that may be on screen so you start interacting with those. And it's very challenging, and there's a lot of examples. I had a BMW example, but I wasn't going to go into it today. But I wanted to focus on a different part of the invisible interface, which is voice. And voice is probably something, or voice interaction with a physical device or a digital device is sometimes one of the things we don't necessarily do quite a bit. I'm sure a lot of us, like these stats here, 40%, use voice for, directions or to dictate a message. And as we've seen with Android and iOS, they've gotten a lot better on picking up our own cadences, which is fantastic. I think it's just going to go beyond with all the machine learning that's happening. The interesting thing with this number is this last bar here. 23% that use voice to interact with their digital device use it while they're cooking. Anybody know why that might be? Well, right? They're actually have their hands in whatever they're making, and they don't want to touch with their greasy fingers all over that screen. Could be iPad, could be iPhone, Android, whatever it might be. So what they'll do is, while they're cooking something, they'll actually ask for directions, or hey, what's the next step, or what do I need to do? So they actually use the device in context to why they're cooking. So voice becomes a way of interacting with that device. That's a great example of using context, in this case, voice, for that cooking metaphor, which could be used in other facets as well. So it's very interesting. Obviously, all the others you kind of understand what would be a great usage, but voice, I think, is going to be a growing interaction model we're going to use in a lot of different devices, and as well as the combination of devices. And that goes into some of these other ones. To just quickly grab some of these items here you might recognize. The top one's the HoloLens. This is Microsoft's Augmented Reality interaction model, which starts to blend together real world and augment to actually interact with your surroundings. We're not quite there yet. I think we're about 5 years away of actually making that viable. There's this interesting, sign language one on the right there. That's actually called Motion Savvy. It's a case that goes around an iPad. It actually translates hand gestures into sign language. So sign language to text, so you can have this communication. Interesting interaction using gestures to actually have interaction. The bottom one here on the left is the Mercedes-Benz vehicle that actually has, what they did was, it's a hybrid vehicle. As you're driving, it's going to go from electric to gas, and as it makes those changes, it actually has a tactile vibration in the gas pedal, so that way it doesn't distract you, to let you know when those things are happening. I think it's interesting, we're starting to see more and more screens in vehicles, but having these tactile interactions I think are going to be very important, not to distract us while we're driving at 70 miles an hour down a highway trying to understand what's happening. I think some interesting, obviously being in Detroit, obviously interesting automotive challenges as well. Now, the last one on the right I left specifically, this is the Amazon Echo. And I don't know, does anyone have one of these? Yes, great. So it's very interesting. It's, let me ask you, do you like it? Love it. What do you use it for? Exactly, music. So out of everybody I've ever asked, music is the top one. So what it is, it's a cylinder device. It's tapped into your Amazon account, Prime account, as well as Amazon Music and all the others. It's a voice assistant. So it's your personal voice assistant. You put it in your home, and you can start talking to it. Now, I left this one here specifically because I love to talk about creepy. And if you thought it had me in the panel yesterday, I brought up the creepy factor. This one gets a little interesting because it's voice, and they say it's not always listening, but it's Amazon. And what does Amazon do when you go to their page? They always serve up, hey, you may be interested in X. Well, I'm sure they're collecting a lot of information around what you might be talking about with whomever in your house, and they're going to serve up those intended products that you may be interested in. But for the music and other types of interactions, it's been great. People love this device. And I mean, I'm a little bit on the teeter here on if I should actually get this device and interact with it because of that creepy factor. And I think that's what we're going to find with these types of devices is without the knowledge of actually what it's doing, when it's doing, that may be a challenge to start building these interactions, these frictionless, friction-free experiences. But on that creepy factor, here's what happens with us very unique human beings. We tend to be very much freaked out or creeped out by technology unless it actually serves up something before we even realize we want it. Then you want to keep on doing it. It's that very interesting model where I'm a little scared to use this, but hey, it actually did what I wanted to do before I even realized I wanted to do that. That's when we actually trigger in our brain and we'll want to use that experience over and over again. And again, this is very much true in trying to create these contextual experiences. So that device, the Amazon Echo, I think is going to lead into a lot of other branching out into those other very interesting interaction models that we'll see in the near future. Now, I wanted to hit on a couple interesting business models as well that blend into this idea of instant gratification economy, which blends into the frictionless experiences. Now, you probably read some articles about the instant gratification. Push a button, something happens. And of course, if you've seen the millennial presentation, it caters to those individuals as well. So obviously, the best example is the well-known Uber. Push a button, personal taxi picks you up, drop you off. Everything else is taken care of. There's no money transaction. It's all taken care of. You can leave your star rating, and then off you go. As well as other ones are starting to pop up as well. There's DoorDash and OneRun, a bunch of different ones. And I think Amazon is starting to do something rather interesting and again, creepy, obviously with their drones, but there's also another thing that Amazon is doing, and what their key is their model is focus on the time to satisfaction. So when I do push a button, something happens. Well, they're going even beyond that. They're actually going beyond that to saying, well, you don't even need to push a button. They actually have what's called an anticipatory shipping patent. And what they're doing is they're collecting all that information, maybe from that Amazon Echo, and actually going to collect all of that and send you products without even you ordering them. They're just going to show up at your house. Now, like I said, you get creeped out by why is this being delivered to my home? Well, if it's something that you wanted anyway, you're going to be happy that you finally got what you wanted, or at least something that you need to run with. So this interesting model, this anticipatory shipping, is going to start kind of changing the habits as well as the, I think, interactions that people are going to have with physical devices or devices in general or services and models. They're going to start anticipating when you want something, and they're going to give it to you. I think that's a very interesting business model when we talk about those friction-free, frictionless experiences. And we'll see it in other models as well. So let's talk about that, that Disney Magic Band Be Our Guest experience. Let's take a step back into that realm again. So inside of that, there's this whole model, and this is kind of the statement I have around employee experiences. If you create a great employee experience, you're ultimately going to have a great customer experience. Those things are tied together very, very tightly. And I think the challenge is, a lot of times creating the employee experience or internal experience is always pushed down the totem pole because obviously the customers don't see it. Although probably more people use that internal experience to serve up the better customer experience than I think a lot of business decision makers actually think about. Now with that, let's go back to that Be Our Guest example. So this dining room has NFC bands that the individuals are wearing, has an NFC and beacons in the tables as well as in the ceilings. So what they do is they triangulate where those family members go to as they sit down at the table. The waiter and waitresses have their digital devices. They're notified to say, oh, the Smith family just sat down at table XYZ, take out their meals and start having them eat. So basically they'll take out their appetizers and then the first dish and others, but all the while they're having this great conversation. Say, hey, Mrs. Smith family, I see it's Timmy's birthday, and they start having these very intimate conversations. And what happened by creating this magic band, which we all thought was just for the customers, or the guests in this case, the magic band is actually moved past this transaction experience that you have in Disney World and Disneyland, and then putting it into more of a personalized transaction or personalized experience. And of course, being of Disney, that's exactly what you want to do. You want to remove all of those all those transaction layers and make it a much deeper personal experience with their employees. So allowing that Disney Magic Band, them to wear that, then broadcasts a lot of information about themselves to the employees so they actually could serve up that better experience and let them know that they're catering towards them. So it's a very interesting model that starts to turn as we gain more and more data. The one challenge to that is as we start to talk about privacy as well as the data, Apple Watch, Android Wear, other things that we're starting to collect, there's a delicate conversation around privacy. So when you start dealing with capturing data and serving up an experience, there's a trade-off in value. So if I'm willing to, or if a customer is willing to give you their personal data, you have to give value back in return. So there's an equal transaction there. So when we start creating these experiences, you have to make sure you understand you just can't take their data and then give no value back. So it's a very delicate balance. So let's talk about wearables. I could probably spend all day and a whole presentation talking about wearables. This is the Gartner Hype Cycle. This is 2015. You can obviously go online. There's a bunch of different graphs that actually graph the entire past 5 years, I think. And what happens here, they actually graph the different types of services and devices and interactions throughout the course of their hype cycle. And right now, as you can see, a lot of the top elements are Internet of Things, wearables, machine learning are just at the tip of those hype cycle, as well as some of the other ones are starting to dip down. Like I mentioned earlier, augmented reality is in that trough of delusionment until they can actually give a business model and have it come out on the other end. So this is a very interesting graph. I recommend just looking the Gartner Hype Cycle up and diving into this. Like I said, wide variety of wearable devices, and I'm sure there's probably hundreds that you can go online and go on Kickstarter and check out, but obviously Some of the interesting ones, the Myo armband with the guy with the arm wrapped around his wrist, this actually listens to the electrical impulses of your arm, and actually you can do gesture interactions, not necessarily gestures that it sees, but it takes the electrical impulses and you can actually control things. They did several things with drones and different types of things. That model there, not necessarily in its form factor today, but I think we'll see more and more of this electrical impulse capture with things like the Apple Watch and the Fitbits and other types of devices, as we see third-party bands starting to tap into that. And you can start thinking about different ways that that could actually work, both personal data as well as controlling things. And obviously the myriad of watches, the Oculus Rift, VR, AR, the HoloLens again. The Misfit is this little diamond. I'm not sure if anybody has this here, but it's this little, diamond, a circular pattern. Interesting with this device, there's a Oscar Insurance out of New York. They're actually giving this away to all of their customers. What they're doing is they're giving it away for free. In return, they're collecting all of their data to then offset their premium costs. So it's a trade-off. Hey, I'm going to track your data, but if you are a healthy individual, we'll reduce your premium costs. Similar things that other auto insurance companies are starting to do. The last one's a NIAM band, which is actually tracking your heart rate. Your heart rate is similar to your fingerprint, so they're using it to unlock your computer, unlock different types of devices. So obviously tons of different wearables. Little twist on this is some Salesforce data that actually looked at it from the business or the enterprise side. So the enterprise is actually looking at wearable devices, and I think they're putting a lot of investment dollars. So you can see by some of these numbers in here, 79% that have used it, or at least think it's going to be a strategic success factor inside of their business. The reason why is this whole number here, 76%, they see an uptick inside of performance and efficiency utilizing wearable devices, because they can actually have an interaction model where it's actually encouraging them, or at least aiding to the performance and efficiencies of what they do on a daily basis. And then investment dollars, 86% are going to invest more into that wearable from a strategic direction. So the wearables, they're going to stick around, and even inside of the enterprise space, we're going to see more and more of those experiences grow inside of the enterprise world. And of course, the Apple Watch. So I want to hit on this one a little bit. There's some, if you've seen the stats, what happened with the Fitbit, everybody wore it for 6 months and then threw it away because it changed their habits and no one needed to wear it anymore. Well, with this being a smartwatch, we've kind of wondered what the interaction model or what the usage model is going to be. So there's actually been quite a bit of Apple Watch studies going on, and they've collected some of the data. Some of this was showed in the keynote last week. 86% of Apple Watch owners still wear it daily. Granted, we're still in its honeymoon period, I guess you could say, and it just came out with Watch OS 2, so which will be interesting the next few months to see what happens. And then they did state that it had a 91% satisfaction rating, so the people that do have it love to use it in the sense that they use it. Now, there's a debate, obviously, why do you want an Apple Watch? It's just another device you have to worry about, another notification. It's definitely not a necessity, but it's definitely a device that it does allow you to be a little bit more productive if you tune it right. But definitely interesting to see the 96 or 91% satisfaction rating, as well as all the other statistics as well. Just prior to my talk, they were talking about micro moments. This is this intent-driven decision-making process that we have with our smart devices that we have in our pocket. I'm sure anybody that's walked into any store that's made a pretty decent large purchase, you didn't just walk in, grab the product off the shelf, and then go pay for it, right? What did you do? You saw the product, pull out your phone, and you started looking at reviews, seeing what it looked like online with other people making reference to it, maybe cost of what it was in other places. That was a moment of intent that you could capture an individual utilizing their device to make a purchasing decision. They've actually did quite a bit of studies around how people actually interact with their smartphone device in these micro moment decision-making processes. 82% of the smartphone users turn to their phone as they influence a process, like I talked about in that store example. 82% will walk in. That's a majority are going to make that decision using their smartphone. These next two statistics are really interesting. 62% are more likely to take action right away towards solving an unexpected problem. So let's say you may have an automobile issue, or you may have to figure out what's wrong with your vehicle, or something breaks down, or just recently my dryer broke and I had to go figure out what was, so I could take it apart myself, and I went online and found all that information. So that was something that I directed right away. This last one, I think, is very interesting when we talk about long-term goals or long-term tasks that individuals do. 90% use their phone while they're out and about to actually do a step process of an ending goal. So for instance, maybe buying a house, buying a car, taking a vacation, setting those things up. While they're standing in line, while they're doing other things, they're going through that stepped goal to actually make changes into that. So that's another moment you can capture them in that interaction to actually influence that either purchase or give them intent and to do something in direction. So I'm going to jump into basic Internet of Things and beacons. So this is when we get into a little bit more of the technology side of things. And again, I could spend all day talking about the Internet of Things and beacons. So the story goes, Internet of Things is anything that can be connected to the internet will be. They even created a trash can that actually takes a picture when people put it in the trash and sends it to Facebook just to see their recycling habits. So the other side of the coin is just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. So I think there's this delicate model right now where they're trying to figure out the benefit of actually adding all of these intricate sensors, wireless, NFC, Bluetooth. But as you can see, this is another Gartner stat here, and you can see the trend. Since there's so many physical objects that can be connected to the internet, it's going to eclipse a lot of the devices we see today, from smartphones, tablets, and an array of other things. So there will be a lot of them. It's just, will they survive? That's the question. So I wanted to bring up iBeacons. This is the more popular Estimote beacon. There was an article that was recently written about Estimote, and I think it was actually talking about their deployment in Target stores. They referred to it as the peeled potato, which I know the Estimote designers didn't really like that comment too well. But if you've ever seen one, they do look like a peeled potato. But these are blue ones, but they do have white ones as well. Bluetooth, so this is low energy Bluetooth, so it's a proximity sensor. It knows how close you are to that particular device, so you could actually put it on objects or inside of retail stores is the popular trend right now, and offer up contextual notifications based on how close you are to that. So if there's a product you may be standing next to, you could actually get notifications. Now, the challenge with this, you got to have a native application to trigger that. There are some things working with Google, though, that allows you to do, called Eddystone, that will actually allow you to bypass the app model, still notification based. But right now, the tip of the iceberg is all notifications, more coupon and discount related, which I think is just the tip of the iceberg. I don't necessarily think that may be the greatest trend to use them for, but I love beacons. We've done a lot of projects with them. One of the things that I found, one of the best comments, or at least statistics around it, was this one. So the Golden State Warriors basketball team, they have a proximity-based location platform inside of their arena. What they did was, utilizing the Golden State Warrior app, if I paid for a ticket, maybe I had seats in the back, as I came in and the game started in 15 minutes, there's always empty seats in the front to some of the games. So what they did is they pushed a notification that said, hey, you can upgrade your seat for $50 more if you want to move up front. Right there, if we go back to micro moments, a micro moment that was captured, and they had a 69% increase in seat upgrades just because of that proximity push notification. This probably was the one single best kind of summed up reason to use beacons in that nature, more than just a, hey, get a discount on something. So I think we'll see more and more beacons, as well as proximity location-based devices start to be utilized in other places besides arenas as well. So it's going to be a very interesting future for a lot of these retail stores and how they utilize them. We talked a little bit about this, the anticipatory design process. That was that model that Amazon was using, and it's really taking large sets of data in real time and predictively serving up the best intended experience. Like I said earlier, how do you create that Goldilocks experience? Well, this is one way to do it. Difficult though. Amazon is just tipping its toe into this realm of anticipatory design, but I think you're starting to see this more and more as more and more apps are starting to show, hey, we're anticipating you doing X. Let's show you some information on how to do that. I think that's where we're going to be seeing a lot of these things. Nest, I think, is a great both Internet of Thing as well as a anticipatory design model with all of their collection of data starting to conform towards the particular customer in their home. But it's now starting to branch out and be more of a platform. It's actually tying into August locks as well as your vehicles, and the smoke detectors tying into the Hue light bulbs. So if you did have a fire, the lights actually blink red to give you more notification. And then all the other myriad of other devices that tap into that. One other thing that starts to happen is the sharing of data or sharing of services. Uber has now started to share its application data to Starwood Hotels. And now those two can actually communicate together. So I'm incented to actually put my Starwood Hotels loyalty number inside of the Uber app. So now Uber knows when I'm at a Starwood hotel to maybe give me Uber notifications to use an Uber ride. And then Starwood Hotels maybe knows when I'm taking an Uber from one stop to another to maybe entice me to do something with their Starwood Hotels. So I think we're going to see this great combination and platform starting to utilize more and more, creating these frictionless experiences that lead towards these anticipatory design kind of models. So some of the key takeaways from here, obviously this is the year of the experience. Again, this is both the customer and employee experience. Try to remember to strip away as much of those options as you can on the screen. Try to think about them from a frictionless experience standpoint. And again, we tend to acclimate really, really quickly if that experience delivers something before we even want it. And then another one is try not to waste time utilizing a screen. You don't have to anyways. Again, trying to remove those frictionless interactions. And again, like Amazon, focus on that time to satisfaction with the customer. That could be both good and that could be bad. So when it has a complaint, respond to that into a timely manner from time to satisfaction, obviously with all the uses of Twitter. And then a great employee experience means a great customer experience. Again, with that great example of Disney Magic Bands, how they could utilize their waiter and waitresses to actually give them a more personalized experience and remove the transactional side of it. And then again, anticipatory design, try to collect that information and try to serve up that best intended experience with more of an anticipatory or what's called a sensing design model is probably one of the last ones I'll leave you with there today. So I'll leave that screen up a little bit if anyone wants to take a picture, but that's all I had today, and I know we're gonna have the last keynote here, so appreciate you very much. And if you take any questions or anything like that, I'll be around, or if you wanna come up and ask. So thanks a lot, appreciate it.